Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going deep into neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change.
Yeah.
And we're going to be focusing on how it all ties into depression.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah, our listener sent in some really interesting research, so I'm excited to really get into it with you today. And hopefully we can answer some of the big questions.
Like what?
Well, does depression actually shrink parts of the brain? Can you reverse those changes?
Oh, yeah. Those are big ones.
And what role does stress play in all of this? Or even medication?
Well, you hit on some of the really key questions. For a long time we thought about depression just as a chemical imbalance.
Oh, yeah, not enough serotonin.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But more and more we're learning about neuroplasticity, and it's becoming clear that depression isn't just about brain chemistry.
So it's not just the level of different chemicals, but how the brain's actually changing.
Yeah, it's about how our brains are physically changing. And this is in response to, things like stress, maybe even our own thoughts.
So it's not just the chemicals themselves, but how the brain is adapting to what's going on.
Exactly.
That is a pretty big shift in thinking.
It is.
One of the areas you mentioned in your notes was the hippocampus. Can you tell me a little more about what that is and how it relates to depression?
Sure. So the hippocampus is it's the brain's memory and learning center.
Okay.
It's really important, for forming new memories, navigating, even regulating our emotions. And what we're finding is that people with depression often have a smaller hippocampus.
Wow. So depression might actually be shrinking parts of the brain.
Yeah, it's a pretty striking finding.
Is that because of the depression itself? Or is there something else that's going on?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, and the research you provided really gives us some clues. Studies have shown that if you expose animals to chronic stress, which is a model for human depression, this also leads to a smaller hippocampus.
So you're saying that stress might actually be a cause of these physical changes in the brain?
Yeah. It suggests that stress itself might be a key factor, driving these changes. It's almost as if stress is chipping away at the brain's structure.
That's both fascinating and kind of scary.
Yeah.
It really highlights how much impact stress can have on us, not just emotionally, but physically too.
It really does.
But is the hippocampus the only area of the brain that's affected by this?
Well, it's definitely a major player, but it's not the only one. Neuroplasticity changes in depression. They seem to affect other areas too.
Like what?
Like the prefrontal cortex.
Okay.
That's involved in decision-making, emotional control, and the amygdala, which processes emotions like fear.
Okay, so we're talking about areas of the brain that control how we think, how we feel, and how we react to the world.
Exactly.
So if those are being impacted by depression, it's no wonder that it can feel so all-consuming, right?
Yeah, it really highlights the pervasiveness of depression.
But how does all of this actually happen on a microscopic level?
That's a great question. A lot of the research that you sent focuses on this neurotransmitter called glutamate.
Okay.
You can think of it like a signal booster in the brain.
Okay.
It helps neurons communicate.
Okay.
And what we're finding is that glutamate plays a big role in, neuroplasticity.
Okay.
And when the glutamate system gets out of whack, it can actually contribute to depression.
So if we could somehow target and regulate glutamate, would we be able to influence neuroplasticity and then maybe treat depression more effectively?
That's exactly what researchers are exploring right now. And this leads us to a drug that you specifically mentioned wanting to learn about, tianeptine.
Yeah, tianeptine. It kept popping up in the research, and I was really curious about it.
Yeah.
Because it seems to work differently than the antidepressants that I've heard about.
You're right, you're right. Most antidepressants work by boosting serotonin.
Right.
But tianeptine seems to work a little differently. It seems to directly enhance neuroplasticity. And some research even suggests that it protects the brain from stress-induced damage. And it's thought to do at least part of this by influencing glutamate. It's it's giving the brain the tools it needs to repair itself and to rewire itself.
I'm looking at some of the research now, and there are a couple of figures, specifically figure 1 and 2 from the regulation of cellular plasticity in mood disorders chapter that really show this visually.
Yeah, those are really great examples. They really demonstrate how tianeptine interacts with specific glutamate receptors. It's almost like it's fine-tuning their sensitivity.
Okay.
And then how this leads to, positive changes in behavior in animal models.
So it's like tianeptine is helping to rebalance those brain signals that are messed up in depression.
Yeah. That's a good way to think about it.
But before we get, like, too excited about Chiamtine,
Yeah.
you mentioned that stress also plays a huge role. Can we talk a bit more about that?
Absolutely. One thing that really stood out to me when I was looking at all this research was just how consistent the findings are about this. Like, chronic stress is a major culprit in those neuroplasticity deficits that we see with depression.
Wow.
Multiple studies highlight how stress negatively affects the hippocampus, disrupts glutamate signaling, and even changes the structure of brain cells. It's like a domino effect.
Oh, wow. So it's like this vicious cycle. Stress leads to depression.
Yeah.
Depression impairs the brain's ability to kind of um, change and adapt, which makes it even harder to deal with the stress.
Yeah, it can be a tough cycle to break.
It sounds pretty bleak, honestly.
It can be.
Yeah.
But understanding it is the first step. And the fact that we are starting to understand the role of neuroplasticity offers real hope. It's like we've found a new way of treating depression, not just by managing the symptoms, but actually by addressing the underlying changes that are happening in the brain.
That is a hopeful thought. So we've talked about how stress can damage the brain and how a drug like cheneptine might actually help to protect it. But what about other approaches? Like, what role does therapy play in all of this?
That's a great question and a perfect transition to the next part of our conversation.
Okay.
Because while medication can be important, it's not the whole story. There's a lot of evidence now that shows that certain therapies, like cognitive behavioral therapy,
CBT.
CBT, can actually promote positive neuroplasticity too.
Okay, I'm really curious to hear more about that. But I think we should probably take a quick break before we dive into the world of therapy and how it can literally reshape our brains.
Okay, so we've established that stress can really do a number on the brain, especially when it comes to depression. But I'm really intrigued by this idea that therapy, specifically CBT, can actually help like reverse some of those negative effects by promoting neuroplasticity. So how does that work? Well, it's pretty amazing when you think about it. CBT focuses on, identifying and challenging those negative thought patterns and behaviors that contribute to depression.
Right.
And what's fascinating is that by consistently practicing new, healthier ways of thinking and behaving, you're essentially rewiring your brain.
Hmm. So therapy isn't just talking about your problems. It's about actually, like, actively changing your brain structure and function.
Yeah, it's about retraining your brain.
That's a game changer. But I have to admit, I always thought of things like meditation and mindfulness as more like relaxation techniques.
Mm.
Do they really have that kind of power to change the brain too?
There's more and more evidence that suggests they do. Studies have shown that mindfulness practices like meditation can actually increase gray matter density in areas of the brain that are associated with, attention, emotional regulation, self-awareness. It's like mental training for your brain.
So instead of letting our thoughts kind of run wild, we can also train our brains to be more present and aware.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how this all ties back into neuroplasticity.
Yeah, it all connects.
And it's not just about calming the mind. Mindfulness also seems to reduce activity in the amygdala, which you said is like the brain's fear center.
That's right.
This could be especially helpful for people with anxiety and depression who maybe have an overactive fear response.
Yeah, for sure. It's like turning down the volume on that inner critic.
Right, exactly. So we've got therapy helping us change our thought patterns. We've got mindfulness helping us regulate our emotional responses. Are there any other everyday things that we can do to boost neuroplasticity?
Oh, absolutely. Remember earlier when we were talking about how stress can actually shrink the hippocampus?
Yeah.
Well, research has shown that exercise can actually help increase the size of the hippocampus
Really?
and stimulate the growth of new brain cells.
Wait, so going for a run or hitting the gym could actually help my brain grow?
It can.
I suddenly feel a lot more motivated to get off this couch.
Yeah. That's the spirit. And it's not just physical activity. Challenging your brain with new learning experiences can also promote neuroplasticity.
Like what?
Things like learning a new language,
Okay.
taking up a musical instrument, or even just doing puzzles and brain games. This can all help create new connections in your brain and keep it flexible and adaptable.
So learning new things is like a workout for the brain.
That's a great way to put it.
I love this idea that we can actively shape and reshape our brains throughout our lives.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing about neuroplasticity. It's a lifelong process. Our brains are constantly evolving based on, what we do, what we think, even who we spend time with.
Speaking of social connections, I remember you mentioning those in your notes. Do they have any, do they play a role in neuroplasticity as well?
They absolutely do. Meaningful relationships and social support, they're essential for our emotional well-being. And research even suggests that they also contribute to positive changes in the brain. Social interaction helps stimulate our brains, keeps us engaged, and even helps protect us against stress.
So spending time with loved ones, nurturing those connections isn't just good for our hearts, it's good for our brains too.
Exactly.
I love how this research is showing us that even seemingly simple choices can have such a big impact on, on our brain health. But before we move on, I'm curious about something. You've mentioned several studies and specific figures from the research.
Yeah.
Were there any other visuals that stood out to you as particularly impactful?
Yeah, actually, there's a table in the chapter Cellular Plasticity and the Pathophysiology of Depression. And it compares the changes that are seen in the brains of animals that were exposed to chronic stress to the changes that are observed in people with depression.
Okay. And what's so interesting about that?
Well, it really highlights the consistency between animal models and human studies.
Okay.
It shows that similar brain regions are affected in both cases:
Like what?
the prefrontal cortex, the hippocampus, and amygdala. And this really reinforces how useful it is to use animal models to study depression
Hmm.
and the effects of potential treatments.
It's fascinating that we can learn so much about the human brain by studying animal models.
It is. And that same chapter has some figures that show the effects of shianeptine on something called long-term potentiation, or LTP.
Okay, I need a refresher on that one. What's LTP again?
Okay, so imagine you're learning a new dance move.
Okay.
The more you practice it, the easier it gets.
Right.
That's because the connections between the neurons in your brain that are responsible for that movement, they're getting stronger with each repetition.
Okay.
So that's essentially what LTP is. It's the process of strengthening connections between neurons,
Okay.
which is vital for learning and memory.
So LTP is kind of like building muscle memory for the brain.
That's a great way to think about
I
it.
like that.
And what these figures show is that stress actually weakens LTP, making it harder for the brain to learn and adapt. But when shineptine was given to stressed animals, it actually prevented that weakening from happening. It's like shineptine is helping the brain to stay strong and flexible even when it's under pressure.
That's incredible. So shinaptine isn't just targeting depression, it's also helping the brain maintain its ability to learn and form new memories, which are like essential for overall cognitive health.
Right.
Are there any other figures that stood out to you?
Yeah. Figure 3 in that same chapter, it illustrates how chronic stress can lead to a buildup of glutamate in the brain,
Okay.
kind of like traffic congestion on those neuronal highways.
Interesting.
But when stressed animals were treated with shineptine, it helped to clear that congestion and keep those signals flowing smoothly.
So again, shinaptine seems to be addressing this core issue that underlies depression,
Hmm.
this disruption in glutamate signaling.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
It's fascinating how these visuals really help us to see the science in action.
They do. And there's one more figure I wanted to mention. Figure 1 from the chapter, Clinical Consequences of the Role of Glutamate and Neuroplasticity in Depressive Disorder. It shows a really pretty stark relationship between stressful life events, hippocampal volume, and memory performance.
No, yeah, I remember that one. It's the one with the three graphs, right?
Yes. And what's striking is that it demonstrates a dose-response relationship.
Meaning what?
Meaning, the more stressful life events a person experiences, the smaller their hippocampus tends to be, and the worse their performance on a memory test.
It's like a chain reaction. Stress impacts the brain, which then impacts cognitive function. And this is happening not just in a lab setting, but in real people's lives. It really underscores how vital it is to address stress as part of, any approach to treating depression.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it also really highlights the incredible potential of neuroplasticity. If stress can have such a negative effect on the brain, imagine the positive impact that reducing stress and engaging in, brain-boosting activities can have.
It's really empowering to know that we actually have some control over shaping our own brain health.
It is.
That's such a powerful takeaway. So it's not about being stuck with the brain we're born with, but actually about actively working to create a healthier, more resilient brain.
Exactly.
It's like we have this incredible opportunity to sculpt our own brains through our choices and experiences.
That's right. And the more we learn about neuroplasticity, the more tools we'll have to do just that. But it's important to remember that neuroplasticity isn't a quick fix.
Right.
It takes time, consistency, and a multifaceted approach.
It's not magic. It's about putting in the work,
Yeah.
both through things like therapy and medication, and also through those everyday choices that support brain health.
I couldn't have said it better myself. We need to think about neuroplasticity as a long-term investment in our well-being. It's about creating a lifestyle that supports a healthy brain.
I think we've covered so much ground today. From the intricate science of neuroplasticity
Mm.
to these powerful ways we can actually influence our own brain health.
We have.
But I'm curious, what does all of this mean for our listener? The person who provided all of this amazing research.
Mhm.
What should they take away from all of this?
That's a great question, and the perfect way to wrap up our deep dive.
Okay, so we've been on this incredible journey through the world of neuroplasticity and how it connects to depression. It's a lot,
It is.
but it's also like really empowering in a lot of ways too.
It really is. I think the most important takeaway for our listener is that, you are not defined by your depression.
Right.
And you actually have a lot more power than you might realize to shape your brain health.
That is so important to hear, especially when you're in it.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel kind of helpless. But this whole conversation has really highlighted that, we're not just passive bystanders here.
Right.
You can actually actively participate in our own healing.
Exactly. And it doesn't require some, radical transformation or complete life overhaul. Even small changes can have an impact, like, adding exercise to your routine
Okay.
or learning a new skill.
Yeah.
These can have a positive impact on your brain.
I really love that idea of building a brain-healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's like we're taking all of this science and turning it into something that we can actually use.
Exactly.
Like real steps we can take that can lead to actual change.
Yeah. And as we learn more and more about neuroplasticity, I have no doubt that, we're going to have even more effective therapies,
Right.
more targeted therapies,
Right.
offering new hope for people who are struggling.
Yeah. This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. We've learned so much about this groundbreaking shift in understanding depression.
Yeah.
The crucial role of neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
The really devastating impacts of stress.
Mm-hmm.
And the potential of therapies like geneptine and mindfulness practices.
It really has been fascinating.
It has. And for our listener, I think the biggest takeaway is this.
What's that?
Don't underestimate the power that you have over your own brain health.
Well said.
Every choice you make, every thought you have, all of it has the potential to shape your brain.
That's the power of neuroplasticity.
It is. So choose wisely and keep learning more about this amazing world, inside your own head.
I love that.
What a fantastic note to end on. This deep dive has been a journey of discovery, not just about the science of the brain, but also our own potential for growth and healing. Thanks so much for joining us.